All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, 2020, and I want to welcome everyone back to our Facebook page. My name is Michael Quedal, Digital Marketing Specialist for the New Jersey School Boards Association. Once again, coming at you live through the power of Cisco WebEx, trying our best to flatten the curve and always practice social distancing. NGSBA has been hosting Facebook Live events to address questions from boards, school administrators, and educators during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you want to replay any previous broadcasts, click the videos tab on the left-hand side of the NGSBA Facebook page. That's where you'll see all of our previous broadcasts and videos. And make sure you click that like button so you can be notified when we do go live in the future. We'll be monitoring the comment section today during and after the broadcast. So if you have any questions or comments or just want to say hi, just drop it in the comment section below and I'll forward it over to Jonathan. This week's Facebook Live events wrap up tomorrow at 1 p.m. as part of our wellness series. Alicia DiLorenzo will be back for her 1 p.m. weekly spot, and she's going to be talking about leading through a pandemic. She'll be speaking more openly about aspects of leading that have been challenging and rewarding. And then altogether, we will practice self-care strategies to support your well-being. And finally, I say this on every broadcast, I hope everyone and their families are healthy and okay during this difficult time. So whether you are a school board member, administrator, teacher, or even a parent, we are here to serve you and help you work through this difficult time. So without further ado, in this interactive session, Jonathan Pushman, NGSBA's legislative advocate, will discuss advocacy in the age of COVID-19 and will provide an update from Trenton. So without further ado, I proudly welcome Jonathan to the program. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michael. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you.
Happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's just dive right into it. Can you provide the audience with a general sense of what the legislature has been up to over the last few weeks? Are they meeting? Are there any important pieces of legislation that are moving or have been signed into law that we should make the audience aware of?
Absolutely, Michael. It has been, as you can imagine, a very fluid, dynamic situation in Trenton across the state. The legislature is continuing to meet. I think when we sort of went into this shutdown, stay-at-home order phase in mid-March, legislature began exploring ways where they could continue to operate, continue to do business in the state, particularly as it relates to the coronavirus pandemic. So when we all were sent home in mid-March, they did hold a couple of voting sessions in person where members of the Senate and Assembly did go to the State House to cast some votes and send some bills to the governor, limiting public access to the State House. And then as we ramped down on some more strict measures in terms of social distancing and the stay-at-home order, they then explored ways where they could operate remotely. So both the Senate and Assembly passed legislation that would allow them to cast their votes remotely. So they had a couple of virtual voting sessions, which I think we discussed in the last legislative update we did on this forum. And so most recently, they had quorums on April 9th, and those are days where they're able to drop some new legislation. Then they both met remotely on April 13th, the whole voting session. For the most part, every bill they passed was concerned with providing some form of relief to businesses, workers, families during the current emergency, to expand the things dealing with sick leave. And there were a couple of noteworthy bills that we had our attention on that would affect our members. They were also related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The one that's gotten some attention deals with the whole issue of providing virtual remote instruction. As our members know, there has never really been the legal authority in the state of New Jersey to allow for remote or virtual instruction of our students and to use those days to meet the statutory 180-day requirement. They've looked into doing this in the past, and we've had some other emergencies or snow days. There simply wasn't the statutory authority for DOE to allow school districts to do that. So most recently, we had a bill was passed, subsequently signed into law, bill number is A3904, and it explicitly permits school districts to use virtual or remote instruction to meet that 180-day school year requirement. Districts, boards, in conjunction with their superintendents, would have to develop plans, submit those to the commissioner. They would have to address a number of different issues, things like technology issues, things like, how do we ensure that students continue to get fed? Schools, for a number of students, are where students get their breakfast and lunches. So that was an important initiative, one that we were supportive of. There were some provisions thrown in there, sort of at the last minute, that also required school districts to hold their employees and contracted service providers financially harmless during extended school closures and due to emergencies such as this. And the bill is somewhat limited in scope. It doesn't allow. It would be for periods where emergencies cause for extended school closures. So if you just have those one-off closures due to a snowstorm, say, this doesn't really come into play. It's when for 3 or more consecutive days, due to a declared state of emergency or public health emergency, districts would then be able to put these types of remote instruction plans into place and continue providing instruction to their students. And then there was the provision regarding employees and continuing to pay them, was, I guess, an attempt by the legislature during these, and it's becoming cliche at this point, to say uncharted territory, unprecedented times, to try and make sure that prevent schools from sending their workers to the unemployment lines, but also encouraging them to find ways, particularly on their contracted service providers, to encourage them to negotiate their contracts, maybe find other things for them to do, things like on the school bus driver side of having them deliver meals and such to students, because obviously they're not transporting them to and from school every day. So that bill has now gone into effect, and districts are, as they already were, implementing it pursuant to the directive from the DOE. But this codifies it in statute. So should anything like this, knock on wood, hopefully not, happen again, districts would be able to respond more quickly and put their existing plans into operation. So that was one bill that I wanted to spend a little bit of time focusing on. The second bill is another one that deals more with the state budget and school funding situation. It's S2338 or A3918 is the COVID-19 Fiscal Mitigation Act. What that bill did was it extended tax filing and payment deadline for businesses and individual taxpayers, as the federal government did earlier this year as well, and modified the duration of the current fiscal year, as well as the upcoming FY 2021 that was supposed to begin in July. And it also requires updates on the current economic situation and a revised budget presentation by the governor for the next fiscal year, 2021. So those were the two that we, had really been focused on, and that our members seem to be most interested.
Great. So let's dive into the budget delay a little bit deeper. What exactly did the legislature do? Can you provide any more specifics around that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as I said, it did extend the tax filing deadline. Typically, we're all required to file and pay any taxes that we owe by April 15th of every year. What this bill did was it mirrored the new federal deadline for just this year, 2020, pushed that out to July 15th, a 3-month extension. And in doing so, it also extended the current fiscal year. In New Jersey, as we all know, we have a fiscal year that runs from July 1 to June 30th. That has now been extended by 3 months to September 30th. So we're no longer faced with that budget deadline, have a new budget in place by July 1st. So what they'll essentially do, what that means from the state standpoint, is for that 3-month period now between for July, August, and September, it'll require the passage of some kind of supplemental appropriation bill, something that extends that 12-year fiscal year and pushes it out for now, what will be a total of 15 months. Fiscal year 2021 is now going to begin on October 1st, and it'll last 9 months. So we're not pushing this extended budget year out into future years. Obviously, they can do that, but this is something that is unprecedented. It's not something that's ever happened in New Jersey, so which is really indicative of we are really trying to find all sorts of creative ways to respond to an emergency situation that none of us have ever experienced in our lifetime. So again, fiscal year 2021 will now begin on October 1st. It'll go for 9 months and end on the standard date of June 30th, 2021. Another provision in that bill is that by May 22nd, the state treasurer will have to prepare and deliver a report on the financial condition of the state budget for both FY 2020 and FY 2021. So that'll give us some kind of update on revenue collections, what we're getting in the current fiscal year. Obviously, that's going to be altered in some way by the delaying of the tax filing and payment deadline. So we'll see where we stand in terms of revenues coming in. Obviously, a lot of folks expect that some of those revenues are going to be down. We haven't been shopping as much as we normally do and putting more money into our sales tax coffers. The treasurer will also be required to come up with some kind of detailed spending plan for the remainder of the current fiscal year. And that spending plan will include some more information on where we stand in terms of school aid, school funding, whether it be direct payments to schools or other payments that the state makes on behalf of school districts, constitutes roughly 40% of the state budget. Big number. And it's something that the treasurer will have to opine on when she delivers that report. And then it'll also include some assessment of the current economic situations and its potential impact on FY21. And then lastly, it will require the governor to issue a revised budget presentation for FY 2021 by August 25th. So then we will basically begin the deliberations on the FY 2021 budget. So those two things are important dates that we have our eye on. We want to see how we're doing in the current fiscal year, but more importantly, or just as importantly, where we're going to be going into the next fiscal year.
Okay. So if the state is moving its budget calendar back, a couple questions. One, are school district budgets also being delayed? Two, what impact will moving the state budget deadline have on districts? And three, also, do you know if districts can expect to receive the same amount of state aid they were promised when the governor delivered his budget address earlier this year?
Those are some very weighty issues, Michael, and I'm not sure I'm going to have all the answers to those questions at this point. Hopefully, we'll get some more clarity on those issues moving forward over the next several weeks and, quite frankly, months. So the first question is, if the state's moving its budget calendar back, are districts also being delayed? And the answer to that one is no. The school budget calendar has not been changed, except for some small changes, delays they allowed for districts that have April elections. They handle their budgets a little bit differently than those who have their elections in November. Namely, that there is a vote on the school budget for districts that have their elections in May. So the DOE issued some guidance, and I believe it was part of an executive order the governor issued that provided them with a little bit more of a grace period to have their budgets finalized. But for the most part, most districts have their elections in November. Their school budget deadlines and calendar remain unchanged right now. And so they are operating or expected to operate as they would in any other year, although we're not in any other year. But under the assumption for now that their state aid numbers for FY 2021 will not change. Now, that's not a promise or an assurance in any way that they will not change going forward. And changing that fiscal year for the state can certainly have an impact on districts, particularly those that are heavily reliant on state assistance. But this will really depend on a whole host of different factors. There are a lot of moving parts, lots of unknowns, namely, what's that revenue update going to look like in May? That may be our first solid indication of what to expect. There are thoughts that the FY 2021 budget that was unveiled in February could be entirely rewritten. There could be some difficult decisions that the state will have to make. And then are we looking at any sort of revenue raisers that could offset these losses? Will they entertain any kind of tax increases? Will there be there's been talk about the potential for public workforce layoffs? Um, what kind of money are we going to get from the federal government? The $2 trillion stimulus package included a bunch of money for schools, but I think they're expecting that Congress will take further action and come up with even more assistance for state and local governments. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the legislature has not disappeared. They are staying very active. And we know that they are actively exploring all sorts of different ways that they can shore up the state budget and shore up the budgets for state and local governments and school districts as well. So, there's a lot of TBD in that answer.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate once again, if you have any comments or questions, just drop it in the chat below, and I'll forward it along to Jonathan. We have one from Tom. He said, "What were the bill numbers on COVID-19 S3918?"
Sure, absolutely. I can go back. It's S2338, Tom, or A3918. I should have mentioned this earlier, so you guys don't have to take a whole lot of notes on this. If you are, we have been actively reporting on all of these issues in our weekly school board notes newsletter. There's, I think, for the last month or so, we've had at least one article that highlighted some of the legislative activity. So that is always, your go-to source for what are the latest developments in the legislature. Go on school board notes, and you can always find some kind of update. And I believe we wrote about the Fiscal Mitigation Act, if not this week, but probably in last week's edition.
Great. We have one from Jane. Hi, Jane. It says, regarding the bill requiring paying all district employees, are districts required to pay the stipends for coaches of spring sports?
That is an excellent question, Jane, and it was one that we um, attempted to get more specific clarity on in the legislation. We didn't get the type of clarity we would have liked, but it seems to be the general consensus that districts would be required to continue paying out those coaching stipends or any other stipends that um, employees have been promised under existing contracts. And this was something that was being handled in a whole host of different ways across our member districts. We know some were considering prorating those stipends. We also know that there are some who are having their coaches or extracurricular leaders continue to provide some kind of coaching or instruction virtually. Hear about training programs, workout programs, things like that. Again, finding some creative ways to stay in touch with your students and your student athletes, so that they're not having an entirely lost season. So that's where we stand. And the other thing that has kind of thrown a wrinkle into this issue is we still don't really know at this point if we're going to have if there is not going to be a spring sports season. The governor most recently kind of kicked that can down the road in terms of when schools would reopen and said, well, we're not going to discuss this again until May 15th. And I know the NJSIAA, the statewide Interscholastic Sports Association, has laid out, I think, some sort of bullet points or parameters of what truncated spring sports season might look like. It's anybody's guess that would open. I think most people don't really expect schools to open, but that has not been made official yet. But the short answer is I believe you still have to continue to pay your coaches. But as always, and this is the caveat that School Boards Association gives quite a bit to our members, is always consult with your board attorney.
All right, so let's switch gears a bit. Earlier this week, the Senate president announced some kind of temporary furlough program that could generate millions of dollars in savings for state and local government. Can you tell us a little more about that proposal, and more specifically, how do you think this will impact school districts?
Sure, Michael. Yeah, this was an interesting development over the weekend, and it started to hit the press this past Monday was a proposal by Senate President Sweeney, as really as an attempt to try and help both employees and employers cope with the existing emergency in a unique way. It hasn't been formally introduced yet, but we think at the next Senate session you'll see an official bill on it. It's referred to as the Employee Job Sharing Furlough Protection Act. It kind of takes the state's existing job sharing law, which I really wasn't terribly familiar with until I started working on this legislation, but which is a law that's designed to reduce the need for mass layoffs during an economic downturn by providing employers with incentives to only reduce hours rather than sending them to unemployment. And so we're taking this existing state law and combining it with some of the provisions in that federal stimulus package, the CARES Act, as it's known for short, that provided all sorts of assistance for states, particularly those to help workers who might be on unemployment rolls. And there's an interesting provision in there that essentially allows states with an existing job sharing law to also take advantage of some of those unemployment funds that are being made available by the CARES Act. So it would essentially allow employers, and it would apply to both public and private employers, as the state's existing law does, to basically say that you can take workers, you may have employees who aren't really needed 100% of the time under the existing circumstances. So you could put them essentially on a temporary partial furlough. This would allow them to, one, continue receiving some portion of their compensation from their existing employers. It would also allow them to take advantage of some partial unemployment benefits by the state, which this new federal law allows for 100% reimbursement. So if you put people on unemployment through this proposal, the feds will reimburse 100%. And so because New Jersey already has one, they can take advantage of that 100% reimbursement for state unemployment benefits. And then it also allows employees to take advantage of the $600 a week that folks who become unemployed due to the current crisis are able to take advantage of. Individuals who are now out of work are now entitled to $600 per week on top of the unemployment benefits that they would typically get under any other circumstances. And so from the Senate, what we're hearing about in the proposal is this would actually allow those types of employees to end up taking home more money than they would if they were continuing to work full time. So that's the benefit on the employee side. The benefit on the employer side is that they would have, not only would we be seeing a 100% reimbursement of those unemployment benefits, but they would result in a reduction in their payroll costs. So let's say you keep somebody, and I think the minimum you would have to keep them on for working part-time is 40%. So you're saving on that 60% of your payroll costs. So it could be some windfall for the any employers who take advantage of this program for school districts. It's kind of targeted to school employees who may not be working full-time. You may have, whether it be administrative assistants or other support staff, but there's simply not enough for them to do right now. And looking at our existing state law combined with this federal law, this could really help them get through these times. And it's not something that would be permanent. The money, the $600 a week through the Federal CARES Act expires at the end of July. So this is what this is it's really an incentive to say, well, we're not going to put people on unemployment permanently. We're just going to put them on furlough so they'd have a job to go back to after this plan runs its course. Based on the information that's been put out there, they estimated that if 25% of the public sector workforce was placed on furlough, it could generate something like $750 million in savings. In terms of what this means specifically for school districts, we obviously have a lot of employees that are just not really furloughable. Teachers who are providing instructions, administrators who are continuing to work on the day-to-day operations of the district probably wouldn't be somebody you would put on furlough. And it would also be something that you would have to work together for any employees who are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. You would have to work these types of things out with your local association before you could move forward. So it would require some collaboration with the union and some buy-in from them before we move forward with this. So again, it hasn't been signed, hasn't been introduced. I think the intent is to try and get it moving very quickly. But we're not really sure when it gets to the finish line. But we've lent some tacit support to the bill because of its intent that hopefully it'll put money back into school district coffers as well as their employees, and it avoids any of that friction that might occur by simply putting people on unemployment. Notwithstanding the fact that there has also been legislation passed that says we have to keep folks on the payroll anyway. So this could be what we look at it as another tool in the tool shed that local governments such as school districts might be able to take advantage of, and maybe build up their reserves as we see that there's maybe some potential for a reduction in state and local revenues going forward.
Okay, but that's in the to be determined. We'll wait and see what happens with that, right?
Absolutely. And the amount of savings is always going to be determined by how many folks participate in this, whether you're able to get that buy-in, whether you think it's something that makes sense in your individual district to put folks out on furlough. But it is creative, and it is something that we definitely think is worth consideration.
Okay. We have a question from Mary. Hi, Mary. What
Mary?
aid for schools was included in the $2 trillion stimulus package, and what were the conditions of receiving that aid?
I'm really glad that earlier today we actually had one of our NJSBA staffers host a webinar that talked a little bit more about this issue. It's something that I have some familiarity with, but I'm still getting my hands around it as well. But I believe there were two pots of money in that package that would provide some assistance to schools and to school districts. I don't believe that money has been made available as of yet. It's going to be, and it's all going to flow through the Department of Education and the front office. And I believe it was passed something like March 25th, March 27th, and it gave Secretary of Education DeVos 30 days to come up with a plan and structure of how that money is going to be distributed. So while there are funds in there dedicated to states, and specifically New Jersey will get a share of that money, we have not yet received guidance and direction on how and when districts are going to be able to take advantage of that money. But we anticipate DOE will be taking the lead on that, and they will serve as the conduit through which districts will be able to receive some of those funds.
All right. We have another question from Tom. How does all of this affect the path to progress savings scenarios that Senate President Sweeney talked about at the end of March?
The path to progress scenarios that he talked about at the end of March. Well, if we're referring to the path to progress package that the Senate President introduced last year, there really hasn't been a whole lot of movement on that. There has been movement on some aspect of reforming school employee healthcare benefits, and he introduced a bill that passed the Senate last month, S-2273, that was going to make some significant changes to school employees' healthcare benefits and the amount that they have to contribute towards their healthcare. That's a bill that's now pending before the Assembly. No Assembly version has been introduced as of yet. But it's quite possible, if not likely, they will take up that legislation or some form of it moving forward. But again, there's no way to tell exactly if and when they'll do that. But the focus of the legislature at this point has been 99% on what do we need to do in order to help people respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, and most other issues have been tabled for the time being.
Yeah. So it seems like in some scenarios it's like a hurry up and wait, and some scenarios is to be determined. We'll find out. So what's ahead for the legislature? Are there any upcoming committee meetings or voting sessions planned?
Yeah, they are planning to continue to meet. The Assembly has a fairly busy schedule, at least on paper, for the months of May and June. They have quorum scheduled as early as Monday, May 4th, then which could be the first time that they hold committee meetings remotely. As the legislature, went into this, when started just operating remotely, we've only had them do voting sessions, which means they get bills get introduced, and they, rather than going through the traditional committee review process, are being sent directly to the floor and voted out, sent to the other house, no committee process, voted out and sent to the governor. So it's our understanding that both the Senate and Assembly are exploring ways to try and operationalize a remote committee meeting process, which, that's been something that, from somebody who works in governmental relations, that's how we get our views across. At least is one way that we're able to go there and speak directly to the members, testify in support or opposition or trying to changes to bills. Most of that occurs at the committee level process, and that's something that hasn't existed since the emergency, since we went into the state of emergency. And we know that they have actually, they've stated that they want to ensure that there is at least some semblance of public participation in this process moving forward. Whether that means we'll be able to do some kind of WebEx or Zoom session that allows us to testify before committee, whether it means, we'll purely only be able to submit testimony and comments in writing. They haven't figured that out. They're exploring, what they can do from a technological standpoint in order to allow for that. So we also have our eye on that Monday, May 4th date, which is the next opportunity for the Assembly to come in and hold committee meetings. But they haven't really provided any specifics on how all of that will work. The Senate doesn't have a schedule out at this point, but I mean, especially since we just talked about a bill that the Senate president wants to fast track through the legislature, I would expect them to continue to meet through May and June. And unlike most other years, we're probably going to see a heck of a lot more summer activity. So I'm not making any vacation plans as of yet.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up the broadcast, is there anything else you want the viewers right now and watching on the recorded to know? And more specifically, how can people get involved right now?
Sure. I think by staying in touch and keeping track of getting involved in these types of sessions, reading our weekly newsletters, seeing what's going on in the press, helps you just sort of stay informed on all the issues. And then we always want them to stand ready. If we need some sort of call to action or need them to reach out to their local legislators, we hope that they will answer that call, as they did most recently when we had some serious reservations at a bill that was going to allow municipalities to delay their payments to school districts. We put out a call to action with other education organizations and boards. Dozens of boards across the state adopted resolutions expressing their formal opposition. And at this point, that bill has languished. It's stalled. It passed the Assembly, but it's now stalled in the Senate. And we think that is something that was due in no small part to the advocacy efforts of not only the educational associations themselves, but their members who got engaged. We always encourage folks to have an active collaborative relationship with their superintendents as well, who are also can be very effective advocates and can help them understand the nuts and bolts of how particular legislation would impact them, and then work together to reach out to your elected officials if there's something you like or if there's something you don't like in a bill. And we will do our best in these times to try and keep you as informed as possible. Again, because the process has been really blown up during this emergency. It's been a little bit trickier to stay up on things because we're not there at the State House. We're not talking directly with these folks face to face anymore. Bills can get dropped on a Friday and passed on a Monday, and we do our best to try and get our fingerprints on them to make sure that they don't hurt districts and ideally benefit them as well.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining the program today. It was always a great conversation, so thank you so much.
Right.
I want to say to everyone watching live and on the recorded, we're going to continue to monitor the comment section. So if we missed your question, we'll try to get back to it and comment below. I want to let everyone know that future Facebook Live events will be announced on njsba.org through school board notes and through our Facebook page. So if you haven't already, you're already here. Just click that like button so you'll be notified when we do go live in future broadcasts. For the latest information, bookmark njsba.org backslash COVID-19. And I'll put that in the comment section below. That landing page is everything COVID. All of that's like our resource page that is updated daily. So I just want to thank Jonathan again. Thank everyone for watching, and I hope everyone and their families stay safe. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the
Stay
day.
home.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mike.